The Urban Institute's State of the Safety Net report, Glock bans being challenged in the courts, union bosses making bank, and insights into stalled economic indicators. Welcome to the States, powered by the Center Square. It's Monday, August 17th, 2026. I'm your host, Greg Bishop. A new tool from the Urban Institute allows users to see just how many people across the country are in each state utilizing taxpayer-subsidized programs for housing, food, and so much more. But it also shows those who qualify often are not receiving assistance across those major safety net programs. Some of the group's findings: 9.1 million people are eligible for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program funding in California, and 54.2% of eligible people actually receive those benefits. In New York, the Urban League found 64.9% of eligible people receive benefits from SNAP. In Arizona, there's 207,000 young children, infants through age 4, that are eligible for WIC, and 57.5% of eligible young children receive those benefits. And in Florida, 915,000 households are eligible for public or subsidized housing, and 19.4% of those eligible households actually receive benefits. Late Friday, I talked with an Urban Institute senior fellow, Linda Giannarelli, about their study and what it all means. Thanks for taking time with us here on The States, Linda. So what is the State of the Safety Net Project?
Thank you so much for having me today. Really happy to talk about the work. So what the State of the Safety Net Project is doing is looking at, as you just said, in every state, how many people and families are eligible for a whole bunch of different programs. And of those who are eligible, what portion of them are receiving those benefits? It's the first time that all this kind of information has been all together in one place across a bunch of different programs and for every single state.
Now, I can't imagine the task of compiling all of this across 50 states. Is it just for 1 year? I think 2023 is what you guys took a snapshot of?
That's correct. Right now, the data are for 2023. We hope to be able to update the data soon, but right now it's 2023.
Still very enlightening as to really, as somebody who's covered local government, state government for years. You hear about all these different programs when the legislature is talking about things, and the federal funds that are coming through, and the taxpayer programs that are helping support these various programs. But you've got 7 different programs. Tell us about, not in super detail, but kind of touch on each one of these different programs.
Sure. So the programs that we were able to look at participation rates for, there's 2 different nutrition programs: the SNAP program, which most people know of as food stamps, the WIC program, which helps mothers of infants plus their babies and their young children, 2 housing-related programs, programs that provide either public housing or subsidized housing, and the program that provides energy assistance, the LIHEAP program, and then 2 programs that can provide cash aid. One that provides cash aid to families with children, and another one that can provide cash aid to people who are 65 and older or who have disabilities.
Not seeing unemployment on this list. What were some of the I guess, qualifications for which program is in this list and which program's not?
Sure. So what we were focusing on here was specifically programs that are what's called means tested, programs that are for families with lower incomes. It would be very interesting to look at this same issue for unemployment benefits, but for right now we were focusing on these means tested programs for families with income below whatever that program's cutoff is.
And a lot of these programs do have different types of qualifications and different thresholds of income levels for a family or an individual to be able to take part in that program. So what did you guys find? What's some of the data telling you, and just how much in taxpayer funding are we talking about?
Sure. So the dollar amounts differ for all the different programs. The dollar amounts also differ for what families can receive in benefits. I would say that the big finding is one that you actually previewed in your introduction, which is that for all of these programs, there are a great number of people and families who are eligible for the programs, but who aren't receiving the benefits. Of the programs that we computed participation rates for, the highest rate we found was in the SNAP program. In the SNAP program, about 6 in 10 eligible people is getting benefits. So even though that's the highest one, it's still only 6 in 10 of the eligible people getting benefits nationwide. And in the program with the lowest participation rate that we found, which was LIHEAP, we estimated a participation rate of 17%. So quite a big range there.
What were some of the reasons why? Is that something you can see in the data as to why there's big uptake with SNAP? I mean, everybody seems to be familiar with SNAP and the SNAP funding, especially during the pandemic when certain SNAP programs were enhanced. But you have a big uptake there, but not so much with LIHEAP, for instance. Is it a seasonal thing?
That's a great question. One of the reasons for the differences across the programs is simply money, funding. SNAP is what's called a federal entitlement program. That means that the federal government is paying the bills, and anyone who applies and who is eligible is entitled to that benefit. So there's no constraint on being able to provide benefits to all the eligible applicants. On the other hand, the LIHEAP program is not an entitlement. Every state gets a set amount of funds every year from the federal government. Every state has to decide exactly how to use those funds, exactly how to distribute them. When the funds are gone, even if someone who is eligible applies, if the funds for that year are already gone, then that household will not get the help with their heating bill.
Now, I know SNAP, it's $100+ billion a year, and states administer it. Is it safe to say we're talking, of course, that's part of these different social safety net programs you guys reviewed here, but is it safe to say there's tens of billions of dollars additional to SNAP that involves TANF or SSI or some of the child funds?
There's a very large amount of funds that are unclaimed or unpaid that families and individuals are eligible for that they're not receiving.
So let's kind of, we've talked about this somewhat of a 30,000 foot level, right? Let's kind of go into some state data. Are there some states that have larger uptake of these social safety net programs versus some states that don't have as much of an uptake?
There are. We did see a wide range of variation in states. For example, I mentioned the Cash Aid to Families program, which is the TANF program, Temporary Assistance to Needy Families. On average, across the country, the participation rate in TANF is about 20%, but there are quite a few states where the participation rate in TANF is under 10%. So fewer than 1 in 10 of the families who their income would qualify them for TANF benefits, fewer than 1 in 10 are receiving those benefits. That's just one example. In all the programs, there are variations across the states, and there's quite a few reasons for that.
Well, and if you could talk about some of those reasons. And again, we're talking about the Urban Institute's review of 7 different social safety net programs, the funding levels of those, and just exactly, who may be eligible not getting those particular programs. What are the reasons for that? Is it that they haven't filed, they're not eligible, they lack awareness of it? What are some of the reasons?
So all of the participation rates that we computed were only looking at families who were eligible. So we were only focusing on families who seem like they fully qualify for the programs. As far as why people who are eligible don't get the benefits, lots of different reasons. In some cases, people aren't aware that the program exists. In other cases, they may be aware that the program exists, but they may not think that they are low income enough. They might think, well, that's for people who are much worse off than I am. And so they might not think to apply for the benefits. In other cases, they may be deterred by challenges in the application process or by the requirements that they have to meet. So there's a large number of reasons that people might not know to apply or might choose not to apply. Another factor is the level of benefits that people might be eligible for. So we do know that the higher the potential benefit, the more likely that families will apply and will deal with whatever those hurdles are to receiving the benefit. We also know that the more serious a family's needs, the more likely they are to go through that application process.
So this might be a tough question for you to answer, but is this a good thing or a bad thing that people are, the percentages that you've found here, the ratios that you found here of people who are not taking up on these things or are taking up on these things?
Well, that is a good question. I think we have to think about the goals of the programs. So if the goals of the programs are to support families who need this kind of help, then I think we have to think about whether the programs are meeting those goals. And if large numbers of families who are eligible for the programs are not receiving the help, now, of course, some of them may not want to apply for the program, may fully know, may choose not to apply for the program. But if that's not the reason, if people are being deterred for other reasons, if funds are running out, then I think we have to think about whether the programs are meeting their intended goals.
And just some of the findings you guys did have there with the Urban Institute's Safety Net project here. In 2023, 69.1 million people were eligible for SNAP. The number of eligible people was 21.2% of the U.S. population. 57.5% of the eligible people received assistance. So it kind of shows you, again, some of the, just over half of those eligible were able to tap into that. So fascinating information and definitely something that people can check out at the Urban Institute. Senior Fellow Linda Giannarelli, thank you so much for taking time with us here on The States. Meanwhile, non-governmental organizations administering taxpayer-funded public assistance in Louisiana must now verify recipients' citizenship or qualify immigrant status under a new law that the Attorney General there says is intended to protect taxpayer dollars and combat public assistance fraud. The Center Square, Louisiana editor, Misty Castile, reports Act 795 took effect at the beginning of this month, and it builds on a 2025 law, which requires citizenship verification for people seeking public assistance from state agencies or political subdivisions. The new law, it extends similar requirements to non-governmental entities administering taxpayer-funded assistance. It also creates reporting requirements designed to show how the verification process affects public assistance. At the end of each fiscal year, entities administering federal or state public benefits must report information including the number of people reported to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and the number whose public assistance was terminated. Meanwhile, in Kentucky, the state auditor there, Allison Ball, is telling the governor, Andy Beshear, that the state could lose federal funding if the government does not join efforts to stop taxpayer fraud. Ball told the Center Square contributor Tate Miller that over the course of the last 2.5 years, her office has identified and recommended corresponding solutions to over $1 billion of wasted taxpayer money in Kentucky. Ball said that her letter to the governor put the governor on notice that President Donald Trump will no longer tolerate the issue within his administration that allows waste, fraud, and abuse to run rampant in Kentucky's public benefits program. If the governor doesn't address these issues, Ball said Kentucky is at risk of losing federal dollars. An unacceptable solution that Kentucky Republicans and Democrats would be hurt by alike. Beshear's communications director has not yet responded to the Center Square's request for comment. You can follow these stories and so much more at thecentersquare.com. We'll be right back with more.
The Supreme Court in the Bruin, in the Heller decision, Caetano and then Bruin, came and said that any firearm that is in common use for lawful purposes is protected by the Second Amendment and cannot be banned.
That was Sam Paredes with gun owners of California in April of last year, warning about lawsuits over bans on common weapons. One of the latest targets, New York's ban on Glock-style handguns. Welcome back to the States. I'm Greg Bishop. California, Maryland, Connecticut, and New York have all passed their own and governor-signed laws that restrict the sale, transfer, manufacture, or importation of certain Glock-like or Glock-style handguns. And again, you can see there, those states, California, their law is effective July 1st of this year. Maryland, their law is effective January 1st of 2027. Connecticut, October 1st of 2026. And New York, their law is effective May 31st of 2027. Now, existing owners can generally keep what they already own under some of these laws. Law enforcement and military exemptions are pretty much standard. These laws are sold as bans on machine gun convertible pistols or convertible pistols. Now, here's testimony from when Maryland was debating its version of this law back in 2025.
This unit that I lead regularly investigates and prosecutes cases involving possession of illegal firearms and their modifications, including the increasingly prevalent Glock switches, devices designed to convert semi-automatic firearms into fully automatic weapons. These devices pose an unprecedented threat to public safety and law enforcement officers in our communities. Recent data reported by Prince George's County Police indicates that we have recovered 47 Glock switches last year in 2024. This year to date, we've recovered 9 Glock switches already.
Are already illegal, but that's not stopping legislators in some states to move to try to ban Glocks or Glock-style firearms. Now, in California, April of 2025, California gun owners, Sam Paredes, he said what he says is these bans, they're unconstitutional.
Glock, the single most popular firearm for self-defense in the world, especially here in California and the United States. They are ubiquitous. The issue of, the Supreme Court in the Bruin, in the Heller decision, Caetano and then Bruin, came and said that any firearm that is in common use for lawful purposes is protected by the Second Amendment and cannot be banned. That's the first reason where this thing is going to go to court immediately if it is signed by the governor.
Is now pending in court. In New York this May, legislators debated their own version. State Senator George Borrello, he didn't hold back on his criticism of New York's ban.
You know, there's a very popular pistol, Glock. A lot of people own it. It's probably the most popular in the United States. And it would fall under this category. So we're basically going to say to New York retailers of firearms, you can no longer sell probably the most popular pistol in the United States. And I believe that my colleagues know that. I'll think that's great. But it's not going to solve the problem because we failed to address the issue. The issue is people who commit violent acts of crime with or without a gun that continue to go unpunished here in New York State. So we're going to say to legal law-abiding citizens, you can't buy it here from a small business, most likely here in New York State.
Again, that law, just as California's law, now being challenged in court. The Second Amendment Foundation, the National Rifle Association, Firearms Policy Coalition, 2 private citizens, and a licensed dealer announced their lawsuit against New York's law. Now, back to California, a Biden-appointed federal judge has refused for now the Trump administration's efforts to block California's law from banning the sale of handguns made by Glock and similar weapons. The DOJ has alleged that California's law is unconstitutional. The question remains, will they join in suing New York over their law? But unlike California's law, New York's law makes violations punishable of up to 7 years in prison. Plaintiffs notes the Supreme Court's already told New York it is out of step with the Second Amendment. Now they're arguing the state cannot ban one of the most popular handguns designed in America. Second Amendment Foundation founder and executive vice president Alan Gottlieb, he put it this way. He said, quote, "Lawmakers in New York are doing nothing more than continuing their unconstitutional assault on law-abiding citizens who want to exercise their Second Amendment rights in peace. Making someone a criminal for selling or transferring a handgun merely because someone can illegally convert those firearms into something that they are not is absurd. It's already illegal to convert these pistols into machine guns, and the conversion itself requires possession of other illegal items. The lawmakers persist in focusing on the handgun and not the criminals who will continue committing crimes with or without this new law in place." Now, Gottlieb talking about what are called auto sears, but have been given the label Glock switches. And that is a piece that goes on a Glock frame to change it from semi-auto to full auto. So what's exactly being banned here? Well, the Second Amendment Foundation says factory stock Glock and Glock-style pistols have a cruciform trigger bar. That design feature alone now meets New York's definition of a convertible pistol. Once the law takes effect in New York, May 31st, 2027, selling or transferring them becomes illegal. Quick translation for non-gun people. Glock and Glock pattern pistols use a polymer frame that houses the fire control group. There's no separate lower receiver like there is for a rifle. Now, the key part of that is the cruciform, or cross-shaped trigger bar that links the trigger to the firing pin. A small illegal parts can be inserted to turn that pistol full auto. Now, Illinois, they advanced a similar bill through committee this year, but it died when the session ended. Here's some on the floor debate in the House chamber during a committee hearing back in May about this particular proposed legislation.
If Glock actually does what you want, they change their ways, they become a better manufacturer, how do they get certified going forward? And that's not in this bill.
The bill explicitly calls for the Department of State Police to make regulations to effectuate the law and its implementation. That's exactly what we would ask them to do, is to examine the current market, look at the definition of convertible pistol in the bill, which is extremely explicit, look at the definition of common household tools, which is a closed universe of known common household tools, and publish a list so that there is no uncertainty. We're not trying to trick anyone here. We want every seller, every FFL operating in the state of Illinois to fully understand the rules and what's lawful for sale and what's not. And if Glock does have a change of heart after nearly 40 years and finally address this vulnerability, that new model will be assessed by the state police and it will be listed as a gun that's not a convertible pistol and will be perfectly legal to sell in the state of Illinois going forward.
Now, as to that proposed bill in Illinois, again, it did not advance before session ended at the end of May. As for whether Glock itself will redesign its guns for these particular states, back to California, Sam Paredes, he doesn't think that that will matter in a state like California.
The author criticizes Glock for doing nothing about this issue. In fact, they did so with their Generation 4 Glocks. They modified them so the Glock switches could not be applied, and all of them in the future. The problem is the state of California prevents Glock from selling Generation 4, 5, and now 6 in the state of California because of the unreasonableness of the roster.
Now, that roster in California, it's a restrictive roster of handguns approved for sale Manufacturers must prove to state regulators that their firearms meet specific safety and testing requirements. Massachusetts has long had a strict handgun roster and sales rules that already limits Glock sales in practice, but bans on switches and ghost guns. It does not, however, have a statewide convertible pistol design that these 4 other states have approved. Now, lawsuits on this and plenty of other Second Amendment fights are still moving through the courts. We'll be staying on top of that and more here with the states. We'll be right back with more. Teachers union leaders make more than $500,000 a year in pay and benefits, leaving critics to say that taxpayer-funded membership dues allow the high compensation. Just what are the public students and parents getting out of that? Welcome back to the States. Joining us to get to the bottom of that question is the Center Square education reporter, Esther Wickham. Esther, thanks for taking time, and especially as we are in an election year and the role that unions play in politics. Let's talk about teachers' unions. And you've got a series that's coming out throughout the week here, starting with just how much these teachers' union bosses are making.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. It's kind of interesting to see, kind of starting out with this series, specifically how much these leaders in these teacher unions, the largest teacher unions, the National Education Association and the American Federation for Teachers, make on an annual basis. We have here the president of the National Education Association, Rebecca Pringle. She makes about $755 per year, and about $149,000 of that is just for benefits and other compensations, as the public filings state. And on the other side of the American Federation for Teachers, the president, Rhonda Whitengarden, she makes around the same. She makes around $514,488 in salary. Again, with a significant portion of that going to benefits and other compensation. So I think it's really interesting to take a look at, how much the average American salary is, how much the average starting salary and average salary for teachers, especially those within the public school sector, are making compared to how much these presidents are making for these teacher unions, and how much they're actually representing those teachers and where students are at in the public school system.
Yeah, and just back to the salaries for these union bosses, Esther, it's not just the presidents of the National Education Association or the American Federation of Teachers that are making $514,000. You've got the vice president of both of those organizations also making 6 figures. For instance, the NEA vice president makes $416,000. The AFT vice president makes $343,000. I mean, that's almost $1 million for just the top 2 spots there in these teachers' unions. That's a considerable amount of money. What does that compare to the average teacher salary?
Yeah, so before looking at the average teacher salary, I think it's important to note the average starting salary. I didn't include this, but the average starting salary for a teacher currently is only $48,000. And the average starting salary now in public school, as you see here, is $74,000. And so when you look on that compared to how much, as you said, basically $500,000 these leaders in teacher unions are making, that's, not even 2 times the amount of what these teachers are making in the public school system. And on top of that, we've seen across the country a continued decline in teachers in public school systems. There's a massive shortage that public schools are facing when it comes to the uptick of needing teachers. And so on top of that, those that are in the school system even currently aren't, making enough, and they don't also, work your average 40 hours a week. They're doing more in the evening and weekends when it comes to grading and hosting various events for the school. And so, yeah, teachers do a lot, and it's kind of interesting to see that dichotomy between that and the leaders for unions.
And $74,000, the average salary for teachers. And what's interesting is you're finding some critics of teachers' unions saying that, of course, they're getting paid by teachers who are getting dollars from local school board budgets, and those dollars are then used to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to bankroll these unions. How much money are we talking about is the AFT and the NEA bringing in every year?
Yeah, so looking at what many of the critics have said about unions, specifically I spoke with Lance Azumi. He's the director of education at the Pacific Research Institute, and he's looked into, teacher unions on a national level, but also specifically the California Teachers Association. And as you said, they're raking in millions of dollars per year when it comes to membership dues. So membership dues are what teachers pay yearly. Usually it's broken down monthly, but it's some states, not all, but they allow that to be a payroll deduction. So before that money hits the teacher's bank account, a certain portion is taken out going to these membership dues. And since these are public schools, these salaries are public funded, meaning taxpayer dollars. So those membership dues are taxpayer funds, and many education analysts and critics say that, as we've seen, these are taxpayer dollars going to these unions, and the NEA gets around 300 to 400, I think it's $454 million per year when it comes to membership dues, and the AFT is around $274 million per year. And so that's quite a chunk of change when it comes to just membership dues. And like I said, these are payroll deducted federal tax dollars that are coming from these salaries.
We're talking, you said millions of dollars earlier. That's hundreds of millions of dollars. We're talking more than or around $750 million, and that's an annual dues they collect?
Yeah, and so it's kind of interesting to see the dichotomy between what's going on there. Hundreds of millions of dollars are collected from federally taxpayer salaries coming out to membership dues. And at the same time, we're seeing this decline on teacher shortages and student test scores, student proficiency levels.
I was just going to ask, what are we getting for this, right? I mean, are the public schools immaculate? Are they, high scores and high test grades and everything?
I mean, as of 2025, according to the National Education Progress, the NAEP reports show that on a national level, we're about 30% proficient, Greg. So our K through 12 students are 70% not proficient when it comes to math, reading, writing on various subjects. And so, we're seeing on a national level students' test scores on a significant decline. And you can look state by state, district by district, and the basis level for proficiency is below 50% across pretty much all states. And so what a lot of critics have told me when talking about this, teacher unions, it seems like they prioritize their political affiliations, their campaign contributions over teachers and students.
And a lot of times, too, you see them pushing for higher wages for teachers, which, I think a lot of people may agree that teachers deserve to be paid well. But you also got to consider unions are going to continue to get a little bit of that increased pay as well. So, Esther, this is an incredible story. And again, it's a series you've got coming out throughout this week, highlighting the impact or lack of impact of teachers' unions when it comes to things within the education space, and also the impact teachers' unions have on politics as we head into an election year. Greatly appreciate your time and your reporting. We'll definitely want to check out those stories. You can find them at thecentersquare.com. We'll be right back with more here from the States. Looking for a job without much luck? Still feel like you and your family are getting by week after week? Feeling those prices for everyday goods continuing to increase? All economic indicators show you're not alone. Welcome back to the States. I'm Greg Bishop. Earlier today, I talked with Everyday Economics co-host Orphe Devungi about what the latest data suggests and what to expect for this week. Orphe, the economy is not falling apart. Business investment strong, and you write that private domestic demand still grew at almost 4% annualized, but it looks, like things might be stalling out. What exactly is going on here?
Yeah, I mean, when you say business investments, really the AI fueled, right? And outside of it, there isn't much moving at all. Businesses aren't hiring. The hiring rate is as low as it's been since maybe 2012. Shoppers aren't really getting more. When you look at retail sales numbers, they're up roughly 5% year over year, but most of it is due to the price increases. And so consumers are just paying more for less. And so that is what's going on in this economy. If you look at the labor market, we're adding roughly 34,000 jobs per month. And in normal expansion, we were adding about 186,000 per month on average, right? So we're running at less than a fifth of the old pace. And the only reason unemployment hasn't risen is because there are simply fewer people looking for work in the first place. So weak demand for workers, but also a shrinking supply of individuals looking for work.
What does that mean for people who are looking for work? Are they able to get a higher paying job, or does it just mean that there's fewer opportunities for them to pick from?
They're stuck. There are fewer opportunities to pick from, right? And even the people who are employed right now, if you look at quit rates tend to be kind of a signal of, if I feel good about my employment prospects, I might just quit my job and go get a higher paying job, right? Quit rates are at very, very low levels right now, because even people in a job right now are reluctant to go ahead and try to move up the pay ladder by switching to another job. It's just a lack of opportunities out there. Businesses aren't hiring. If you're not in AI or, in San Francisco or in, parts of the Pacific Northwest, there just aren't a lot of opportunities in this labor market. Maybe one more industry, healthcare. I think when we see this in the past year, healthcare has continued to create jobs. So healthcare, and of course the AI, related sectors, like right now the building of data centers is where the jobs are. If you look at residential construction, starts, permits are falling. That's not doing very well either.
And we're going to find out a lot more about the housing starts this week with some reports due out. But obviously still looking at the overall prospects of the jobs markets and what that means to consumers. How are and should consumers be viewing what's happening with the jobs market?
Yeah, I think most households are just trying to keep up, right? Inflation is exceeding wage growth. And so, your real purchasing power has fallen over the past year. And so I think most households are just trying to keep up. It's like running on a treadmill, right? And not going anywhere. And if you look at retail sales, you look at consumer spending overall, it's really just kind of holding on for dear life. If you look at, and that's on the price front, right? You look at interest rates remain elevated. And so that means that households are now paying more to service their debts. So if you combine, higher credit card debts and auto loan payments to rising prices, you have a household that's increasingly squeezed. And that's kind of what the picture looks like for most households in the United States. Of course, when we talk about this kind of K-shaped economy, the 10% spending 50, 60% of the share of the total spending, right? You do have that segment at the top that continues to spend because, of course, they can't afford to. they have gained so much in stock market returns. Many of them invested in the stock market in getting to benefit from the surge in AI-related companies, right, in the stock of AI-related companies. But the rest of the economy, really, the majority, really just kind of holding on and hoping that there will be some resolution in terms of the Middle East conflict. There will be some resolution in terms of gas prices coming back down and then providing, kind of that windfall. Right now, that's not happening.
Orfe, a lot of things to consider here this week. As we mentioned, housing starts. I want to get your take on what to expect briefly, but where does all this lead the Fed leading up to Wednesday's meeting minutes being released?
Yes, in terms of construction, the fact that mortgage rates remain elevated, and of course we're headed into kind of the summer season too, where kind of housing activity tends to cool down. You take all of that, and I don't expect builders to step on the gas. I think permits are going to remain low, if not at a what I consider a depressed level. But you also have a lot of units that were authorized but not started yet, right? And that means basically starts could go up. Builders could say, okay, well, we've already got all these permits. We're waiting to get these units started. And so maybe we could start some of these units ahead of next year's home shopping season. Remember, it takes 7-8 months to get units on the market. And so they might start, later this summer to actually build some of these units that were permitted already. But I don't see permits increasing, right? I don't see them saying, hey, let's plan to build new communities in the current environment, especially given that they have more sitting inventory, right? More inventory kind of sitting there waiting for people to walk through the door and to sign the contract. So builders are facing those major headwinds right now, as mortgage rates remain elevated, persist at much higher levels than we've had in a while, right? Last year, this time, mortgage rates are falling. This year, they increased and they remain elevated because of all the factors, right? The macro headwinds, the conflict, the tariffs, everything that's pointing to inflation remaining higher for longer.
Well, Orfe, a lot more for us to digest, including later this week with the FOMC meeting minutes being released and the significance of that being. We'll get a better idea of where the board of the Federal Reserve really is at in keeping rates flat, but are they angling towards increasing those rates? So we'll have to have you back on here in the very near future to review those meeting minutes and see exactly what that tells us moving forward. Orfe Divounguy, PhD economist, greatly appreciate your time as always. Welcome back to the States. It's now time for America's Talking, with headlines from across the country you can find in the description below or in your inbox with the Center Square newsletter, free at thecentersquare.com. Voters in Florida heading to the polls to elect partisan representatives in races that could determine the balance of Congress in November. Florida is one of 10 states across the country that's participated in rare mid-decade redistricting in order to favor a particular political party over another. With a Republican trifecta in state leadership, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis pushed forward on a new map that would favor Republicans in Congress. The Center Square's Andrew Rice reports Florida's new map has the possibility to flip 4 seats in the state currently held by Democratic members of Congress. Currently, the U.S. House of Representatives is split 217 to 212 in favor of the GOP. Florida's primary is tomorrow. Also holding primaries Tuesday are Alaska and Wyoming. Wisconsin hospitals charge 25.6% more to their patients for in-person care than hospitals in Illinois even within the same company, according to a new report shared exclusively with the Center Square. Costs for hospital services are negotiated between hospitals and insurance carriers, and fewer options on each side of the negotiation mean less leverage to negotiate. The Center Square reporter John Stife tells us, in particular, hospitals that are able to negotiate percentage of charge contracts where prices rise over time instead of set fees for particular services are more expensive to patients, according to the study from the University of Wisconsin's Madison's Anthony Lasoso and Capital Policy Analytics Ike Brennan. Read that story at thecentersquare.com. The Shreveport City Marshal maintains his practices are permissible despite the auditor's report that found lodging expenses for members of his staff to attend an annual judicial conference in Florida may violate the Louisiana Constitution. The Center Square reporter Darren Svan reports James Jefferson is the city marshal and secured re-election this month to a 6-year term after his challengers withdrew from the race. The marshal's office said in the 40-page audit that it does not intend to charge its practices in response to the noncompliance allegation. Jefferson's defense is based on Louisiana Supreme Court guidance governing lodging expenses for judges who attend the same conference. And Pennsylvania's public school students could benefit from a new federal education tax credit program next year, but the state has yet to opt into it. The Center Square contributor Lauren Jessup reports 31 other states have done so. They announced plans to participate in that federal program. Meanwhile, Governor Josh Shapiro says that he's waiting for additional federal guidance as lawmakers seek out Pennsylvania's participation through legislation. The Federal Scholarship Tax Credit Program, or FSTC, also known as the Education Freedom Tax Credit, was created by Congress in 2025 through the Working Families Tax Cuts Act as part of the One Big Beautiful Bill. It establishes a new federal tax credit of up to $1,700 for contributions being made by an individual to a scholarship-granting organization. Those are nonprofits that accept qualified donations and use the funds to provide scholarships for education-related services at private or public schools. Should Pennsylvania opt out, residents could still claim the credits by contributing to an eligible SGO in a participating state, but those contributions, they would fund scholarships in that state, not in Pennsylvania. And that's just some of what America is talking about. Get these and other headlines at thecentersquare.com. From my studios in Central Illinois, I'm Greg Bishop, and join us back here Tuesday for more stories impacting you, the taxpayer, from around the country, only with the states. Powered by the Center Square.